Now, then we also have to make a choice between international journals and regional journals. Can I see a show of hands? Has anyone here in Indonesia published in an Indonesia-only or a Southeast Asia-only journal? Just one or two people, very few people. I understand there are not too many regional journals in this part of the world. In other countries, like in China, we have many Chinese journals. In Korea and Japan as well, but not so much in Indonesia. There are good reasons often to publish in regional journals, because you will reach your regional government or your regional your colleagues for, relevant topics. International journals, however, tend to offer you the widest exposure and worldwide recognition, which is what universities often look for. It says here they generally have higher publishing and ethical standards, although that varies, I have to admit. But also, international journals may not be accessible to just anyone, because international journals tend to ask quite high subscription fees from libraries, so maybe your library may not be able to afford them. Regional journals, as I said, are often a good fit for research that's primarily domestically significant. An example here is diseases, but they don't have international recognition, and they may not be indexed in the major databases, and therefore they may not be easy to find. I wanted to say a few words on publishing models here. I mentioned open access a little bit earlier. Open access is the idea that you write your work, you send it off to a journal, you pay a fee at that point, that's called the article processing fee, or APC, which allows you, based on which the editors will then send your work out for peer review and eventual publication. If you do that, your paper will be accessible free of charge to anyone who wants to read it. That's good. There's no paywall, there's no restriction on accessibility by the general public worldwide. And therefore, in principle, that would allow you to get more citations. And that's also often, where I'm based in China, at some of the institutions, my colleagues get paid a bonus for every citation they receive every year. So citations are often important for people in various institutions, particularly here in Asia. Here are some advantages of this open access model, and I have a short movie about open access somewhat later this morning, so we'll get back to this again. The key advantages are that you have wider and faster impact of your research, which is good, right? Because you want people to notice your work. An increased interdisciplinary dialogue and collaboration, because people can access your work again, and increased citation and possibly usage of applied research. We'll get to that movie towards the end of this morning's presentation. Then finally, I wanted to say a few words about how your work can be discovered by the relevant audience, the relevant people in your field of research. And one of the main ways of doing this is through abstracting and indexing services. There are a lot of abstracting and indexing services which allow you to specifically search for keywords or for journals or for authors, etc., to make sure that your work is available to the broadest possible audience. There are a number of them here. You may have heard of PubMed in the medical sciences, Scopus, Web of Science, IEEE Explore, that's electronics engineering, ISI, Embase, CRX. So there's a lot of those indexing services out there, and they're all competing with each other, and there is a lot of overlap. Scopus is one of the big ones, and so is PubMed. They contain literally millions of peer-reviewed items, articles, conference proceedings, books, etc. These services provide access to articles and ebooks through what we call metadata. Metadata includes usually the title, authors, date of publication, journal title, keywords, the DOI. The DOI is what's called a digital object identifier. It's like it's an address on the internet, in essence, for every single bit of work. And so these are all very useful indexing services to find research that is relevant to your field, and also for you to for your work to be discoverable. Here's an example of Scopus. Scopus is the world's largest citation database of peer-reviewed publications. This is from their website. It includes content from more than 5,000 publishers in 105 different countries. At the time that this screenshot was taken, there were 61 million records from 22,000 journals, 90,000 conferences, and 120,000 books. So there's a lot to discover there. You can discover, journals is mostly in the exact physical sciences, conferences, engineering and computer sciences. In those fields, conference publications are what count. Conference publications in computer science and engineering tend to be peer-reviewed, and they count for promotion and awards at universities. Books are mostly in the social sciences, the arts, and the humanities. So I'm actually writing a book right now on a topic in the history of science, and my director, the director of my institute, was asking me, well, why are you doing this, Richard? Because you're not yet retired. Because he doesn't see writing a peer-reviewed book as something useful in my field, because I'm in the physical sciences. I just ignored him because I'm, sufficiently senior and I have a whole army of students who work with me, so we can actually publish plenty of journal papers during the year while I'm also writing my book at the same time. That's just because I'm interested in writing it. Finally, for your work to be discovered, it would be helpful if the journal actually helped you announce it, advertise it. These days, many journals have a presence on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, what have you. Again, being based in China, most of those are actually blogs. The Chinese government blocks Twitter and Facebook, so we don't have access to it, but we have Weibo and Renren and all the Chinese equivalents. It's not very helpful if you want to reach an international audience, but that's life. And then the other question is, are the articles indexed by popular search engines? So, do you find them on Bing or Google, or I should mention Google Scholar as well. I haven't mentioned Google Scholar yet, and you might wonder why. I talked about these abstracting and indexing services, PubMed, CiteCRX, what else did I mention? Scopus, etc. I did not mention Google Scholar. The reason for that is that Google Scholar includes anything and everything that's published and has a little bit of an academic flavor to it. That means that Google Scholar may be a good first point of access, but it's not the final word on quality. Because Google Scholar also includes papers in predatory journals. So it might be a good way of finding interesting articles, but then you have to make sure that these articles were published in proper journals and not in predatory journals. So that would be a two-step process. While going to Scopus, you know almost for sure that the journals indexed there are high-quality journals. So my point here is be very careful when only relying on Google Scholar. And I know that Google Scholar is easy to access, you don't have to pay a fee, but you have to really think about this. This is very important. So here are my tips on discoverability. Improve the searchability of articles by including the following. Use popular keywords. Every single journal these days, just below its abstract, asks you to include a number of keywords. Often, the journals have lists of recommended or approved keywords on their websites. And you just pick a number from them. Usually it's maximum 5 or 6 or something like that. Optimize the use of graphics. It says here vector graphics, so that means graphics that can be scaled up and down in size. So it's easy for people then to share it, maybe in other presentations. I do that all the time. When I teach my students, this is not academic skills like we're doing today, but when I talk to my students about astrophysics specific content, I often take figures from peer-reviewed journals and use them in my presentations. And that way, the authors, of course, get more exposure as well. Consider using Google Analytics. So that is a service that allows you to track how many people download your paper, how many people read it, and how many people cite it. which gives you a good idea of the impact your work has internationally. Check it out. And then you can also publicize your article on social media, and some ideas are there. And that's particularly helpful if you also have an eye-catching figure, for instance, that you can add to this. I'm looking at the time because I do want to take a 10-minute break at some point for everyone to just recover a little bit. We'll continue a little bit longer, and then we take a short break. So here's a quiz, and I would like to see a show of hands. The question is, which of the following are types of manuscripts accepted by journals? Show of hands, review article. Who thinks that they can be accepted in journals? Yeah, okay, some people think that. Correspondence. Yes, I hear. Scientific news highlight. It seems to make people shake heads, some hands up, but people are not quite sure about that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Original articles? Yes. Letters, communications? Yes. Okay, fine. I should have a few more because suddenly now people start putting up their hands. So all of these are indeed accepted by journals except the scientific news highlight. And I still have to make a little bit of an exception there because journals like Nature and Science do include science highlights, but they do this using a team of science journalists. They don't ask you as a scientist to write a science highlight, but they have actual journalistic teams work for them. So the point of this is there are many different ways in which you can publicize your work and reach the right audience such that the audience can also discover the impact of your work. Right, let me go through one more subject before we take a brief break. And that's about journal quality. And this refers back to what I was just saying earlier about these predatory journals. So here are a number of questions you will have to ask yourself when selecting the right journal. Most importantly, while considering journals for publication, it is important that authors are able to obtain the relevant details on the journal's homepage. Go to the journal's homepage and see if you can find out as much information as possible of any of these questions asked here. And that includes, is the journal read by your target audience? How do you know that? Well, you can ask your professors, right? Would you read this journal? When you've written your own article with your literature review, have you cited articles from the journal you intend to submit to? If so, that's good. If not, why the heck would you submit to that journal if you didn't even cite from them? Right? This is an important consideration. Is the journal peer-reviewed? That's crucial for you to get academic credit. Peer review is not the ideal way of publishing, but there is currently no better way. Peer review can be gamed, and we will talk about that later as well. Is the publisher clearly mentioned? You might be surprised by this question, but if you go to the websites of predatory journals, they don't actually say who the publisher is. It's very difficult to find information about the publisher or about how to contact them. And if there is an email, it's often some email at gmail.com or hotmail.com. So it's not a proper email address, it's a free email address. Be very, very suspicious when you consider a journal for publication and they don't have proper contact details, because it's most likely that there's something not quite right with them. How does a journal rank compared to other respected journals in your field? Again, your professor can help here, or your library at the university can help here. Does your library provide access to the journal? If so, that's probably good, because they have people who have vetted the quality of the journals that they subscribe to, because it costs a lot of money to subscribe to journals, so you don't want to waste money on poor quality journals. Does it have an ISSN? That's a universal number. It's like an ISBN for books, but this is a number for journals which is unique internationally. So these are some of the key questions to be asked. Now that might be a lot at this point to consider, but it actually there's a new movement called the Think, Check and Submit movement. It's a cross-industry campaign intended to help you, researchers, identify trusted journals for your research. It's been developed by organizations such as the Committee on Publication Ethics and the Directory of Open Access Journals. We'll talk about these later. Also including Springer Nature and Biomed Central. So this is a genuine campaign that is trying to educate authors as to how to select their journal. And they have made a very nice video, which I would like to share with you in my next slide.
You've done your research and are ready to publish. Sharing your results with the world is key to the progress of your discipline and to your career. Publishing your work with an untrustworthy journal has the potential to damage your career. With the number of journals growing at around 3.5% annually, and almost 1,000 new journals launching in 2014 alone, how can you choose a trusted journal for your research? Think, check, submit. Before you decide, step 1. Think. Can I trust this journal with my research? Do I need more information before I can decide that this is a trusted journal? Step 2. Check. Does the journal publish research that you would read yourself? Can you tell which organisation publishes the journal? Can you contact them easily if you need to? Does the journal have editorial policies in place? And do they conduct appropriate peer review? Does it charge publication fees, and are they clear about how much they cost? Do you know the names or reputations of any of the editorial board members? Are articles in the journal indexed in any of the services that you use? Step 3. If you can answer yes to most of these questions, then submit. By following these 3 steps, you can identify which journals will reliably publish your work and make an impact in your field. When you finish your next article, remember to think, check, then submit. Check the website for more tips to help you find a trusted journal for your work.
I can highly recommend this. I am a mentor of the Author Aid Network, which is a network for researchers from developing countries trying to get their work published in international peer-reviewed journals. Author Aid is a signatory to this campaign as well, and so this was triggered in a way by the increase in the number of fake journals, predatory journals, and fake publishers to make researchers aware of the potential pitfalls of just submitting to anything. You have to be very careful about this. Now, I've talked for about 45 minutes now. Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll continue at 11:15 with the second half of this morning workshop.